One of the main problems we can see during a wet spring and the subsequently soggy pasture is that very few edible grasses and plants can grow for your animals to graze on. An even bigger problem is the permanent damage it has the potential to cause over long-term exposure, running the risk of making the land completely unsustainable for grazing through soil compaction. If you're situated in the hollow of a runoff or at the foot of a mountain, then all that rain and winter melt is likely going to pool where you're farming. All of that constant muck causes biological matter to break down differently, making the soil too acidic or too compacted. Inclines can also be an issue for our mountain friends. All that sludge is being held in place because the ground down below is still frozen at the beginning of spring. Once the temperature rises enough for it to melt, it dumps all the top layers collection, along with all of the soil and what little did manage to grow, all in one massive offload. Whatever conditions you're dealing with, you need roots in the soil to keep it in place. You need plant matter to balance out the pHs and the acidity and whatnot. Let's take a look at some ways to manage seasonal runoff and compaction so you can keep your pastures thriving even in the spring rainy season. Berms and swales are an essential tool for farmers managing heavy rainfall periods, such as the spring. These shallow channels are strategically dug along contours, usually by a tractor that drives with a blade to cut a trench. These are used to capture the slow water flow, preventing erosion and facilitating better absorption into the soil. The point is to slow the water down and spread the area in which it can be absorbed. This design is intended to intercept and slow rainwater coming down slope and redistributing it along a broader area. Basically, the water flows sideways instead of straight down the mountain like a cascade, taking all your topsoil with it. Good soil will take in the spread excess water. By using the natural contours of the land, you can store water across the land. A berm and swale combo also help increase infiltration rates and reduce runoff, thereby promoting groundwater recharge and sustaining pasture health. Research shows that properly designed systems can significantly mitigate the impact of heavy rains, with studies showing they can reduce runoff by up to 90% compared to untreated slopes, effectively conserving water and enhancing soil moisture retention. Integrating berms and swales into sloped pastures not only supports flood control, but also fosters a resilient ecosystem that can better withstand variable weather conditions because it retains that captured water for longer time periods. Swales are usually dug on contour, that is, the horizontal elevation lines of a hill. You can find these by using an A-frame level, laser level, or for people who have livestock, it's usually the path animals walk horizontally across the mountain. They naturally follow contour. Trees are water hogs, so you put them to good use. A mature walnut can use about 43 inches of water per acre in an average year. Their large root systems absorb excess water, reducing surface runoff and soil erosion. Research indicates that a mature deciduous tree can absorb as much as 57,000 gallons of water per year through its roots and transpiration process. This absorption not only helps regulate water flow, but also replenishes groundwater levels, which are vital for sustaining pasture vegetation during dry spells. By strategically planting and maintaining trees within pasture landscapes, farmers can enhance water infiltration rates, improve soil structure, and mitigate the impact of heavy rain events. The trees also offer shade for the summer when the rainfall is not abundant. Now you've got two different benefits. Beyond absorbing excess water, trees can also play a role in creating more rain through a process known as transpiration. This natural phenomenon occurs when trees release water vapor through their leaves into the atmosphere. The vapor contributes to the formation of clouds and, ultimately, precipitation. Research suggests that forests and wooded areas can increase local precipitation by up to 20% compared to areas without trees. This phenomenon shows the interconnected relationship between vegetation and water cycle. Silvopasture is an agroforestry practice that utilizes trees, forage crops, and the grazing of livestock in a functional system. This is a managed grazing method which focuses as much on the grazing habits of the animals as the grow rate of the trees and crops in the system. Check out our link at the end of this video to check out silvopasture, which is the use of trees on pasture to provide shade and food for livestock, as well as water absorption. Then there's the option of planting a fodder or crop that actually does well in those mucky and damp conditions. Having something growing won't just keep your soil from eroding away when it does eventually run off. Plants also use a great deal of that water for you, and so much the better if you can feed your animals and you in the process. For clay-like and waterlogged soils, all of the clover species, bird's foot trefoil, canary grass, water sedge, some species of ryegrass, some fescue varieties, phalaris, and edible grasses growing in your area are all good options. If your climate is wet and muggy, there will be some grass or shrubbery around you that will be able to handle it. But you'll need to have a look at your region and find out what it already has growing naturally. And most cereal grains are perfectly fine to grow in those waterlogged conditions. Rice does well too if you have a lot of water, depending on the variety. Rice hulls, if you can get your hands on the byproduct, is a fabulous fiber to throw down to absorb and aerate the soil at the end stage of spring to speed up the drying process and give some nutrients back to the inevitable runoff. The giant radish, carrots, and oilseed rape actually do surprisingly well in mud. They won't be fit for human consumption, but they'll encourage your animals to go rooting for them, particularly if you raise pigs. But be careful with pigs on slopes, because if you leave the soil completely uncovered, it's going to do even worse during heavy rainfall, leading to compaction, and then even less will grow. If you are grazing pigs, make sure that a cover of forage is left behind to hold the soil in place. Radishes are also great for breaking up the compaction that can come after heavy rain periods, so win-win. So throw down a handful and see what happens. Berries are another great option. Livestock have a habit of decimating bushes down to the root if they can get a hold of them. But if you've got a large area to work with and it's dispersed among other plant sorts, a few of them will do just fine. And if you can catch the ground at its absolute driest, again, put down a few trees. You might have to fence them off from the animals for a few years until they get well established, but they'll help enormously to suck up some of the moisture and provide valuable root systems. Walnuts, sweet gum, cypress, some varieties of maple and oak do well in damp ground. When water is standing, you do not want livestock in it for health and safety reasons, but rotational grazing before the rain can improve the soil so it can better absorb the large amounts of water when the time comes. Research shows that well-managed rotational grazing systems can increase soil organic carbon over time, significantly enhancing the soil's ability to absorb and retain water. This increase in organic matter not only improves soil fertility and resilience, but also reduces runoff by up to 60% compared to continuously grazed pastures. Research indicates that increasing soil organic carbon levels can substantially enhance the soil's ability to retain water. Studies have shown that each 1% increase in soil organic matter content can increase water holding capacity by approximately 20,000 gallons per acre in the top 6 inches of soil. This means that soils with higher organic carbon content can absorb and retain more rainwater, reducing the amount of runoff and enhancing water availability for plant uptake during dry periods. Again, you don't want to be grazing in standing water, but it's a method to improve the soil before the heavy rains come. If your wet season is short, there are some choices to put in the ground that will handle the wet once they're well established. Alfalfa, even though it's a dry climate crop, can actually handle a surprising amount of flooding. You'll have to experiment with it, though, to see if it can survive your cold season. Some varieties are more cold-hardy than others, and alfalfa certainly has a limit to how much it can handle, but there's no harm in giving it a go. Alfalfa will be the most profitable crop to sell. Every species of livestock can eat it, and it will grow for years before they need to be replaced. For selling purposes, they need to be replaced every 4 years or so, but as an open grazing option, dispersed among other fodders, they can hang on forever. Comfrey can pull through too, if they're planted with the most possible time to mature before the pooling comes back for the year. Some stores sell a grass and legume mix that's usually all right for waterlogged soil too. Keep in mind that smooshy clay is going to dry out eventually, leaving you with a rock-hard surface that nothing can grow in anyway. The only way you're going to avoid that scenario is if you cultivate as much organic growth as you possibly can and keep living roots in the soil. It doesn't matter which method or multitude of methods you use to tackle the issue. Getting things will help manage the water. Once the soil becomes bare, you are in more trouble. The headache of dealing with compaction that won't grow anything is much more labor-intensive than it is to dig a trench. If you have enough growing in your pasture, a surprising amount of that water will get used by what's already going there. The long and the short is good pasture management leaves forage in the soil which protects it from elements like heavy rainfall. Using the pillars of regenerative agriculture, rotational grazing, cover crops like grasses, agroforestry integration all lead to a resilient system for your farm and livestock. Remember that a well-planned and managed system will yield good results. Let gravity do most of the work for you and leave the rest to the cattle and the goats to munch down. After every haircut, those grasses and bushes are going to suck up even more as they put out new growth to replace what's been eaten. At the end of the day, it's best and most effective to use a multitude of solutions. In the same way that integrating as much variation onto your land is better for biodiversity, growth, and the overall health of your animals and crops, so are solutions to problems best when they're tackled in as many ways as possible. Are you using a system that we haven't heard about before? Tell us about it. We like to tell our viewers that there's never an end to how much you can learn about your land. And the same holds true for us too. We greatly appreciate every ounce of wisdom you have to share, and we take your requests for future videos very seriously. So leave a comment and share your thoughts. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, cheers.